I never expected to hear those words from my own father. She's nothing. Greg, a failure. Should have never been born. That's what he said, on a video call with an old friend. While living rent-free in the house I paid for 3 years, I covered the mortgage on our $800,000 home. Food, bills, everything. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just made a decision. 1 week later, I sold the house and moved across the country. I left them with the echo of their own words, and no one left to pay their way. Before I tell you what happened next, drop your city in the comments. Hit like if you've ever been the one who gave too much, and subscribe for more stories like this, because this one might be yours too. My name is Madeline Brooks. I'm 31, and on paper, I had it all. A luxury 4-bedroom colonial in the suburbs of Boston, a fast-rising career at Bellington Financial, and a reputation for being the one who made it in a family that always seemed to look elsewhere for validation. Every morning at 5 a.m., my alarm rang. I'd drag myself out of bed, lace up my running shoes, and hit the treadmill in my basement gym. After an hour of cardio and weights, I'd down a protein smoothie, jump in the shower, and hit the road before the city came alive. By 7:15, I was stuck in traffic on I-93, inching my way into downtown. My colleagues often said I was the embodiment of discipline, drive, precision. 3 promotions in 5 years, direct access to the firm's senior partners, and my boss, Eleanor Grant, had personally taken me under her wing. Madeline, she'd say during our monthly check-ins, you're the future of this firm. Smart, steady, strategic. Keep this up, and there's no ceiling for you. I always smiled, grateful for her words, but no one knew what I came home to at the end of each day. You see, 3 years ago, I bought that house in Brookline, not for anyone else, for me. It was supposed to be my sanctuary, my reward, my space to breathe. I imagined quiet mornings, dinner parties, maybe, eventually, a partner who wanted the same kind of life. But 2 months after I moved in, that vision disappeared. My parents, Raymond and Margaret, showed up with duffel bags and downcast eyes. My father's second construction business had collapsed. Again. And their landlord had apparently decided to sell. Just until we get back on our feet, my mother promised. Only temporary, sweetheart. That was 3 years ago, and they never left. They paid nothing. Not for the mortgage, not for the utilities, not even for groceries. My father spent most of his time in the basement, where he'd apply for jobs between long coffee breaks and midday naps. My mother volunteered at church and met friends for lunch. They never asked what time I'd be home, never cooked, never even said thank you. But every Wednesday evening, my younger sister Rachel showed up with her husband, Daniel, and their 3 children, for family dinner. She'd married her high school sweetheart at 20, dropped out of community college, and never really looked back. And yet, every time she walked through that door, my father's eyes lit up. There's our girl, he'd say, arms wide open, as if I were invisible. After dinner, I'd clear the dishes alone, then slip away to my office upstairs, where I'd catch up on client reports and performance forecasts. The same reports that kept our firm ahead of the curve. The same forecasts that helped our clients retire comfortably. The irony didn't escape me. Samantha, my best friend since college, had tried to intervene more than once. Madeline, they're not your responsibility. You didn't create their mess. But I always gave the same answer. They're my parents. What do you expect me to do? Leave them on the street? She'd shake her head and whisper, no. But I expect you to stop setting yourself on fire just to keep them warm. I didn't have a response, because deep down, I already knew she was right. It happened on a Wednesday. The same day I always hosted family dinner. The same day Rachel would sweep into my house with her loud, laughing children, her husband Daniel trailing behind with store-bought pie and his permanent easy smile. But that Wednesday felt different from the moment I opened my eyes. I had a presentation that could change everything. Eleanor had trusted me with the lead for a multi-million-dollar retirement account. A new client with potential to become one of the firm's top portfolios. "Land this," she'd said, "and we'll talk about the promotion. The one that would finally put me in the senior analyst seat. The one I'd quietly chased for years." I stood in front of the mirror that morning, smoothing the sleeves of my blazer, grounding myself with a breath. Then I walked into the kitchen where my father sat with his coffee, scrolling through his phone like every other day. "Big day today." "Dad," I said, "wish me luck." He didn't even look up, just muttered, "Sure. Good luck." Not even a glance. Not even a nod. I bit my tongue. Smiled anyway. Because that's what I always did. The presentation went better than I could have hoped. Clear questions. Strong engagement. At one point, the CEO leaned in and said, "Miss Brooks, you've clearly done your homework." When it ended, Eleanor pulled me aside and said, "Take the rest of the day off. You earned it." I left the office buzzing with pride. For once, I wanted to share the win, not with my colleagues, not even with Samantha. I wanted to share it with my parents. Maybe, just maybe, this time they'd look at me the way they looked at Rachel. I pulled into the driveway at 2:30. Their cars were there. Odd. Mom usually had book club. I figured I'd surprise them. Celebrate. Maybe. I entered quietly through the side door, the one that opened straight into the kitchen. Then I heard it. My father's voice. In his room. On a video call. I recognized the voice on the other end. Greg Harlan. One of his old friends from the construction days. "Yeah, we're still living with her," my father said. "What choice do we have? The housing market's insane." There was a pause. "She's nothing. Greg, a failure. Should have never been born." The words sliced through the air like a blade. I froze. "She makes money. Sure. But what kind of life is that, 31? No husband, no kids, married to her job. It's pathetic." I backed up into the hallway, heart racing, unsure whether to scream or collapse. Greg's voice crackled through the speakers. "At least you've got a roof over your head." "Yeah," my dad muttered. "But at what cost?" "My dignity." "You know how embarrassing it is to say your daughter pays your bills?" He laughed bitterly. Then, his voice changed, softened. "Now Rachel, she's my real achievement. 3 grandkids. A solid marriage. Sure, she didn't go to some fancy school, but she's got what matters. A family." And then, I heard my mother. "Who are you talking to?" she asked. "Just Greg. We were talking about the girls." She joined him, her voice closer now. "Did you tell him about Madeline's promotion?" "What's there to say?" he scoffed. "Another rung on the ladder. Who cares?" My mother sighed. "Sometimes I wonder where we went wrong with her. So cold. So focused on money. Not like our Rachel." I stood frozen in the hallway, their words echoing down the walls I paid for. "The only good thing about living with me," they said, "was saving money. Another year or two," they whispered, "and they'd buy a house near Rachel." That was their dream, not mine. The watches I gave them last Christmas tasteless. The promotion I'd worked years for. Who cares? The home I built with my bare hands. Just a temporary stop on their way to something better. And me, a failure, an afterthought, an ATM with a heartbeat. I didn't remember walking back to my car. I don't even remember turning the key. All I know is, by the time I reached Samantha's apartment, the world as I knew it had shattered. 31 years of trying to earn their love, of being the good daughter, of sacrificing everything for the approval I never got. All gone in the span of one overheard conversation. And something inside me shifted. Not just anger, Not even grief. Something sharper, colder, clearer. I wasn't going back to that house. Not tonight. Maybe not ever again. I don't remember parking. I don't remember the elevator ride up to Samantha's apartment. I just remember sitting on her couch, hands trembling, trying to speak, and failing. She didn't press me, not right away. She simply wrapped a blanket around my shoulders, placed a mug of chamomile tea in my hands, and sat beside me in silence. When the words finally came, they poured out in a voice I barely recognized. I heard them. I whispered. And then I told her everything. What they said. What they thought of me. What they'd always thought of me. Samantha didn't blink. Her fists clenched in her lap, eyes blazing. "That's abuse," she said quietly. "Emotional abuse. Plain and simple." I shook my head. "No. They're just old. Stuck in their ways. No. Madeline," she said, firmer now. "They're not confused. They're cruel. There's a difference." I stared down into my tea. The liquid barely touched. My heart was still racing, but the shock was beginning to fade. In its place, something colder was settling in. A quiet clarity I'd never allowed myself to feel. I had spent years trying to earn what they had already given away. Every achievement, every promotion. Every time I swallowed my exhaustion and offered to help, every canceled trip, every holiday I hosted, all of it, done in service of a love they had reserved for someone else. I thought about the first year-end bonus I ever received, $15,000. I used every penny to pay off the last of my father's construction debt. He'd taken the check with a smile and said, "Thanks, kiddo." Then immediately called Rachel to talk about private school options for her oldest. I thought about the European vacation I'd saved for over 3 years, postponed once for Dad's knee surgery, a second time when Mom's car broke down, a third time when Rachel had a medical bill that insurance didn't fully cover. I lost deposits, lost vacation days, lost pieces of myself, and still, I'd said nothing, because that's what daughters do. I gave them the master bedroom when they moved into my house, moved myself into the smaller guest room without complaint, cooked dinner, paid every bill, cleaned up after their family nights. I even defended them when people questioned it. When coworkers asked, "Why don't your parents work?" I said they were in transition. When friends raised eyebrows at their long stay, I said it was temporary. When Samantha begged me to stand up for myself, I said, "It's not that bad." But it was. It always had been. Now, sitting in the soft glow of Samantha's living room, wrapped in a blanket that didn't judge me, I saw the truth with devastating precision. They didn't love me the way I needed to be loved. They loved me the way they needed me to function, as the provider, the fixer, the useful one. And that love had conditions. Be quiet, be successful, but not too proud. Give, but don't ask. Be present, but expect nothing in return. It was never really love, just convenience in a respectable disguise. Samantha leaned closer. "You don't have to go back there." I looked at her, the question hanging in the air. Where would I go? What would I do? But even before I answered her, I knew. This was the moment I stopped hoping, stopped bargaining, stopped waiting for them to change. I wasn't going to confront them. Not yet. They'd twist it, deny it, blame me. They always did. No. What I needed wasn't a confrontation. What I needed was freedom. And for the first time in 31 years, I was finally ready to take it. The next morning, Samantha placed a warm mug of coffee in front of me and said gently, "You need to talk to someone who isn't me." I knew exactly who she meant. Dr. Laura Holloway. I'd met her once before at a professional burnout seminar, back when I thought self-care was something other people needed. But now, Sitting in Samantha's living room wrapped in borrowed calm, I realized I didn't just need a therapist. I needed clarity. We called her office together. And somehow, by grace or good timing, she fit me in that afternoon. Her office was nothing like I expected. Soft light poured through tall windows, and the chair she offered was less clinical, more sanctuary. I sat down, inhaled once, and told her everything. Not just the call, not just the words, but the years, the patterns, the erasures, the thousand tiny ways I had been made to feel like an accessory in my own family. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I just told it like a case study, like a life I'd analyzed from the outside. When I finished, Dr. Holloway sat in silence for a moment, her expression calm but deeply focused. Then she said, "What you're describing is not just neglect or favoritism. It's betrayal. Slow, quiet, deeply rooted. You're grieving the parents you thought you had." I felt the words land inside me like a key turning in a long-locked door. It wasn't just the pain of hearing what they thought. It was the realization that they'd always felt that way. I just hadn't wanted to see it. "I keep wondering," I said slowly. "Should I go back there and confront them? Tell them what I heard, how I feel, make them understand." She tilted her head, not in judgment but curiosity. "Would that give you what you need?" I pictured it, standing in that kitchen, shouting while they denied, deflected, rewrote history as they always did. The tired scripts, the tears on command, the accusations turned back on me. I shook my head. No. They'd say I misunderstood, or that I was too sensitive. Or worse, they'd turn it into something I should apologize for. "Then let me ask again," she said gently. "What would give you what you need?" The answer came without resistance. "Freedom," I said. "I need to be free of them. Free of the guilt, the performance, the relentless need to prove I matter." She nodded. "And how might you begin to claim that freedom?" That's when something inside me shifted. I stopped thinking like a daughter. I started thinking like the analyst they'd raised me to become. I left her office that afternoon not with answers, but with something better. A framework. A strategy. I knew my financial standing. I knew the legal reality. The house was mine. The bank accounts were mine. The silence I'd been buying for years. That was theirs. And I didn't need it anymore. I drove back to Samantha's and opened my laptop, created a spreadsheet, labeled tabs financial, legal, real estate, logistics. I wasn't planning a confrontation. I was planning an exit. This wasn't about punishing them. It wasn't about proving a point. It was about removing myself from a system that had fed off me for decades. I would leave, not in rage, but in clarity. I would sell the house, start over somewhere new, somewhere far from the weight of what I'd carried, somewhere I could breathe. Portland came to mind, almost instantly. I'd always loved the mountains, the quiet, the distance. I didn't need their approval to go. I just needed my own permission. That night, while Samantha slept in the next room, I built a plan, line by line, step by step. I researched homeowner rights, listed out contacts, outlined timelines. By morning, the spreadsheet was complete, not perfect, but solid. And for the first time in years, I felt steady, not hopeful, not excited, just steady. And in a life built around keeping everyone else standing, that steadiness felt like power. I didn't tell my parents, not yet. Not until the wheels were already in motion. But in that quiet moment, watching the first light of dawn filter through the blinds, I made myself a promise I would not explain. I would not beg. I would not wait for them to understand. This time, I would choose me. The next morning, I called in sick for the first time in my career. Eleanor didn't push. "You've earned 100 days off," she said with concern in her voice. "Take what you need." I told her it was just a 24-hour bug. In truth, it wasn't illness that kept me from the office. It was clarity. I had a mission now, and it required precision, not performance. My first call was to Marcus Bell, the financial advisor I'd worked with for years. We'd met over quarterly reviews, market outlooks, retirement planning. But that day, I wasn't calling about the future. I was calling to cash in the life I'd built for everyone but myself. I didn't tell him everything, only that I needed to liquidate some investments to prepare for a move and potentially purchase a new home out of state. "How quickly do you need access?" he asked. "Soon," I said. "Very soon." He gave me the numbers. No penalties, no tax surprises, just clean logistics. I was in a strong position, far stronger than I'd let myself believe. Next came Jennifer Russo, a real estate agent recommended by Marcus. She specialized in high-speed, discreet sales for professional clients. "I understand you're looking for a quick turnaround," she said when we first spoke. "Privacy, minimal disruption, and an efficient closing." "Exactly," I replied. "My parents still live with me, but they're not co-owners. The deed and mortgage are in my name alone." Her tone shifted instantly. "That simplifies things. We can move fast." She scheduled a visit to assess the home's condition the next day, timing it carefully for when my mother would be at her weekly hair appointment, and my father, predictably, in the basement tinkering with projects he never finished. I walked her through each room, the echo of memories thick in the air, the dining room where I'd hosted endless birthdays, the kitchen where I'd cooked holiday meals they never thanked me for, the guest room that used to be mine, after I'd given them the master suite. She nodded professionally, snapping photos, taking measurements, all without comment. I was grateful for her silence. This wasn't a house. It was a history I was ready to leave behind. Later that evening, I began sorting through what would stay and what would come with me. Important documents went first: birth certificate, passport, insurance papers, and property records, then jewelry, small valuables, a few items of clothing I still liked. I worked methodically, careful not to disturb anything that would tip them off. My goal wasn't drama, it was escape. In the back of my closet, I found a cardboard box I hadn't opened in years. Childhood journals, yellowed drawings, report cards, handmade Mother's Day gifts. One entry, dated April 12th, age 12, stopped me cold. "Dad forgot my science fair today. Mom said he was busy, but I saw him watching TV when I got home. Rachel got a bike for a B. I got all A's. No one noticed." I read it again. The words from a little girl who hadn't yet learned how deeply love could be conditional. There were more entries like that. Notes about birthdays missed, awards ignored, favors repaid with silence. I'd written it all down like facts, without resentment, without complaint. Just the truth. And now, those truths were the foundation of my resolve. As I packed the last of the journals, my phone rang. "Rachel." I hesitated. We didn't talk often outside of Wednesdays. "Hey," she said. "Are you okay? Mom said you didn't come home last night." I debated telling her the whole story, but something stopped me. Rachel wasn't cruel, but she had lived her whole life with love on demand. She had never seen our parents without the mask they wore for her. "I'm staying at Samantha's." I said simply. I just needed some space. Space from what she asked. Genuinely confused. Did something happen? I paused. "Let's meet for coffee," I said. "Tomorrow. Somewhere halfway." "Okay," she replied after a beat. "Sure. Is everything all right?" I looked around my room, the suitcase half packed, the journals tucked beneath a folded sweater, the open spreadsheet on my laptop screen. I didn't answer immediately. Instead, I said what felt most honest in that moment. It will be. The cafe was busy enough to give us privacy. Background chatter and clinking cups wrapped around us like a shield. I chose a corner table by the window, halfway between my apartment and Rachel's house, just as I'd promised. She arrived 5 minutes late, hair in a messy ponytail, coat slightly askew, the look of a mother who'd just wrangled 3 kids into a minivan. She spotted me and waved, her smile open, familiar. "Madeline," she said, dropping into the seat across from me. "You look tired." It wasn't a judgment, just observation. I gave a tight smile. "It's been a long week." She ordered a latte. I sipped the tea I'd been nursing while waiting. There was a pause between us, one I didn't rush to fill. For once, I let silence be uncomfortable. "Finally," she asked. "What's going on? Mom said you left without a word. Dad thinks it's stress from work. Are they right?" I met her eyes. "No, it's not about work. I'm selling the house." Her brow furrowed. "What, I'm putting the house on the market?" I said calmly. "The listing will go live next week. I've already spoken to a realtor. The process is moving quickly." "But why?" Her voice was small now, almost like a child's. "You love that house." "I thought I did," I replied. "But I've come to realize I only loved what it represented. Independence, stability, a future that belonged to me." I paused. But that future never really arrived. Rachel leaned forward, confusion clouding her features. "What about Mom and Dad? Where are they supposed to go?" I knew this was coming. It was always the next question. Never about me, always about them. "They'll figure it out," I said softly but firmly. "They're adults. And they've had 3 years of living in a home they didn't pay for. I think that's more grace than most people would be expected to give." She blinked, her mouth opening and closing. I knew they were staying with you, obviously. But I didn't know you were paying for everything." "Everything," I said. "Mortgage, utilities, groceries, their car insurance, medical bills, even their cell phones." She looked stunned. "I thought they were helping out, contributing at least a little." "They haven't contributed a cent," I said. "Not since the day they moved in. They call it temporary. But that house has been mine for 3 years, and I've been the only one keeping it afloat." Rachel picked at the edge of her napkin. "I wish I could help more. But with the kids, and Daniel's business just getting stable." "I'm not asking you to help," I interrupted gently. "I'm just telling you what's happening. I wanted you to hear it from me, not from a panicked phone call when they realize the house is actually listed." She looked down at her cup, then back at me. "Did something happen, I mean, besides the money? Is there something else?" I studied her face. For a long moment, I debated whether to tell her the truth. The phone call, the words I heard, the years of comments she never knew they made. But as I looked at her, confused, maybe a little scared, I realized she hadn't been part of that cruelty. She hadn't known. So I said the simplest truth I could. "I need a change. I'm moving to Portland. The house will sell quickly. They'll need to find their own place. They could maybe stay with us for a while," she said slowly. "The guest room's small, but it's something." I nodded. "That's between you and them. I'm not trying to dictate where they go. I just know I won't be part of that equation anymore." She reached out, almost without thinking, and placed her hand over mine. "Are you okay?" "Really?" I was surprised by the warmth in her voice, the sincerity. For a moment, I saw the girl who once stood in front of me, arms crossed, daring Dad to explain why he'd yelled at me for breaking a coffee mug. I will be, I said. I think, for the first time, I will be. 3 days later, the sign went up. A white post with crisp lettering. For sale, Jennifer Russo, private listings specialist. I watched from the front window as the installation team pounded it into the lawn. The sound echoed louder than it should have, like the final nail in something I hadn't fully buried yet. I arrived home from work that evening just as the sun dipped behind the trees. My father was waiting in the driveway, arms crossed, face flushed with a familiar anger I hadn't seen in years, not since high school, when I missed curfew by 20 minutes and he called me irresponsible in front of our neighbors. Beside him, my mother wrung her hands, the picture of concern, eyes glassy, but not from sadness, from fury barely held behind a mask of maternal worry. "What the hell is this?" my father barked, gesturing toward the sign like it had personally insulted him. I didn't flinch. I walked past him calmly, keys in hand. "It's exactly what it looks like," I said. "I'm selling the house." They followed me inside, voices rising. "You can't just sell our home without talking to us first," my mother cried. I placed my bag on the console by the front door, turned, and met her eyes. "It's not our home. It's mine. My name's on the deed. I pay every bill, every repair, every grocery run. You've never contributed a cent." My father's voice deepened, a familiar warning tone. "So that gives you the right to throw your own parents out on the street?" I didn't raise my voice. "I'm selling a property I own. What you do next is entirely up to you." That's when he pulled out the trump card. "I'm calling Rachel. She'll talk some sense into you." I shrugged. "Call whoever you want." An hour later, we were gathered in the living room like some twisted family sitcom. Rachel sat between our parents on the couch. Keith stood awkwardly by the entryway. The kids had been sent to the backyard with snacks and screen time. My father called it a family meeting, but I knew what it really was. An intervention. "Madeline," Rachel began gently. "I understand this is sudden, but maybe we could talk about a longer timeline. Give Mom and Dad time to find a new place." "This isn't sudden," I said, my voice even. "They've had 3 years of notice. They just didn't want to see it." Keith, surprisingly, spoke up. "Honestly, it's a smart move. Portland's booming, and from a career perspective, it makes total sense." My father shot him a glare that could melt steel. Not helpful. "Keith." My mother turned to me, tears forming with practiced ease. "Sweetheart, is this really about work, or is something else going on?" I looked at her and knew. This was the moment. I had carried the truth long enough. "I overheard your conversation," I said calmly. "The one with Greg, 3 weeks ago. You thought you ended the call, but you didn't." They froze. I heard everything. I continued. "How I'm a failure. How you're embarrassed to live with me. How Rachel is your real achievement. How you're just pretending until you can move near her." My mother went pale. My father opened his mouth. But I cut him off. "I don't need your denial. Or your excuses. What I need is for you to understand that I heard you. And that's why I'm done." I reached into my bag and pulled out a folder. The air in the room thickened. "This is a full accounting of what I've spent supporting you for the past 3 years. I handed it to them. Rachel leaned over to look. Her eyes widened as she read. "Madeline, mortgage payments, groceries, insurance, repairs, vacations, medical bills, even your cell phones. Over $150,000. That's what I've given." My father looked stunned. My mother stared at the numbers in silence. Rachel turned to them, her voice tight. You told me you were paying for the girls' college accounts. I said, $500 a month for 5 years. That's 30 grand they never told you about. Her mouth dropped open. You've been paying for my kids' futures and letting them take credit for it. Yes, I said, because I thought I was helping the family. I didn't realize I was being used. Silence fell over the room. And then, finally, my father whispered, "What are we supposed to do now?" I met his eyes. For once, without flinching. Figure it out. The way I always had to. The next few days passed in a strange stillness. The house, once loud with tension and passive-aggressive chatter, had gone quiet. My parents didn't speak to me unless absolutely necessary. No more questions about when I'd be home. No attempts at small talk over dinner. Just silence, cold and calculated. The same tactic they used when I disappointed them as a child. The message was clear: I had betrayed them. But for the first time in my life, I didn't rush to fix it. I focused on the plan. Jennifer had staged the house beautifully while my parents were out for brunch. Just as I'd arranged. Neutral colors, minimal decor, just enough warmth to suggest family without revealing the one that had lived here. The listing went live Thursday night. By Friday morning, the first offers began rolling in. By Sunday, after the open house, we had 7, 3 of them all cash. The highest, $875,000, with a 21-day close and no contingencies. Accept it, I told Jennifer. Are you sure? She asked. We might be able to nudge them higher. The speed matters more than $10,000, I said. I'm ready to go. The official closing date was set for June 17th, 3 weeks away. That Monday evening, I came home from work to find the living room rearranged. My parents sat on the sofa, stiff and waiting. Rachel was with them. Her husband and kids were absent. This wasn't a visit. It was a summit. We need to talk, my father said, gesturing to the chair across from them like a judge assigning seats in a courtroom. I sat, calm, prepared. This has gone far enough, he continued. You've made your point. But throwing your parents out of their home, your family, that's not something a decent person does. It's not your home, I said. And I've already given you 3 weeks' notice. That's more than fair. My mother's voice broke in, already laced with tears. We've done everything for you, and this is how you repay us. Rachel tried to interject, but my father raised his hand. No, she needs to hear this. I stayed quiet. Let him speak. Let him list every perceived slight, every narrative he'd built to protect his pride. You've always been cold, selfish. You think money fixes everything, but you don't care about family. You never did. I waited until he stopped. Then I looked at both of them. You think I'm selfish, I said softly. Let me remind you. I've paid for this house, covered your expenses, funded your vacations, even contributed to your grandchildren's future while you lied about it. And I never asked for thanks. But now that I've drawn a line, you call it betrayal. My mother's voice cracked. We're your parents. We're all you have. No, I said. You're all I had. That chapter is ending. Rachel turned to them. You can come stay with us temporarily. The guest room's small, but it's enough while you figure things out. Oh, sweetheart. My mother started, her tone shifting instantly. We don't want to impose. But she was already mentally packing bags. As they launched into logistics, storage units, rent deposits, and moving dates, I stood. I had nothing left to offer. Rachel caught my eye over our mother's shoulder. For the first time, I saw it. The understanding, the quiet apology. She gave me a small nod. The kind sisters give each other when the truth has finally broken through years of fog. I walked out without another word. There was nothing else to say. They had treated me like an extension of their needs for years. Now, I had finally severed the contract. Unwritten, but enforced through guilt and silence. And it felt weightless. The morning of the closing, I woke up before dawn. The house was silent, not cold, but hollow, like it had finally exhaled after years of holding its breath. The furniture was gone, the walls bare, just outlines of picture frames and sun-faded shadows where things used to be. Even the echo of footsteps sounded different, lighter, somehow temporary. I met Jennifer at the title office at 9 sharp. The signing took almost an hour, pages and initials, signatures and notarizations. When it was done, she handed me the check $823,450, minus closing costs and the remaining balance. "Congratulations," she said, shaking my hand. "Most of my clients cry on closing day, but you look relieved." "I am," I said quietly. This was never home. It was just a stop on the way to something better. Afterward, I went back one last time. The front door creaked the way it always did. The air inside smelled faintly of lemon cleaner and something older. Memories too stubborn to leave. I walked through each room slowly. The kitchen where I'd prepared 3 years of dinners no one thanked me for. The dining room where I sat alone after family nights, scraping plates into silence. The office where I first heard their voices say I never should have been born. I ended in what used to be my bedroom, the one I gave up so they could have the master suite. The carpet still bore the indentations of my bed. A single moving box sat near the window. The last of my things, a photo frame, a candle, and the journal I started the day I bought the house. There was a knock on the front door. I opened it to find Rachel, standing there alone. "I thought you might be here," she said, holding a paper bag. "Breakfast. From that bakery you like." I stepped aside, and she entered slowly, looking around. "It's strange seeing it this empty. I like it this way," I said. "It's the first time it's ever felt like it belonged to me." She set the bag on the counter. "They moved into our guest room last night. Mom's already complaining about the mattress. Dad keeps talking about how cramped it is." I didn't say anything. Rachel looked at me. "I'm sorry, Madeline, for all of it. I had no idea what they were saying behind your back." "I know," I said. "They kept you in the role they needed you to play, just like they did with me." She nodded, slowly. "I got the love. You got the responsibility." I never thought to question it. I gave a small smile. "Why would you? You were raised to believe it was normal." We sat on the floor, eating muffins out of the bag like kids hiding from homework. It was the first moment in years that felt uncomplicated. "Are we going to stay in touch?" she asked. I looked at her, really looked at her. For so long, she had been the symbol of what I never had: approval, affection, ease. But now, she was just my sister. Flawed, waking up, trying. "I'd like that," I said. "You and the kids. We can video chat. Build something new. Just us." She smiled, and I saw a flicker of relief in her eyes. "I'd like that too." We walked through the house together, turning off lights, locking doors. At the entryway, I handed her the spare key I'd kept hidden in the planter. "Take care of yourself in Portland," she said, hugging me, awkward but sincere. "You too," I replied, "and don't let them do to you what they did to me." Samantha was waiting outside in her car, windows down, music playing softly. She smiled as I got in, and we pulled away from the curb. The house grew smaller in the rearview mirror, until it disappeared behind a line of trees. The road stretched ahead like something clean and unwritten. We stopped at small towns, roadside diners, places neither of us had been before. We sang with the windows down, talked about nothing, talked about everything. With every mile, the pressure on my chest lightened. With every state line, I felt more like myself, who I had been before they made me the caretaker of their comfort. When we finally arrived in Portland, the sun was setting behind the mountains. Carla, my new agent, met us at the apartment. Clean white walls, big windows, a view that stretched toward possibility. "This is yours," she said, handing me the keys. And for the first time in years, I believed her. Life in Portland didn't feel real at first. The quiet mornings, the air that smelled like pine and promise, the absence of footsteps outside my bedroom door. No one asking what was for dinner. No unpaid bills tucked into the mail. Just silence. And space. I didn't have to explain. I moved in over a weekend with Samantha's help. We unpacked slowly. There was no urgency, no tension, just the rhythm of starting over. I bought furniture I liked, not what was practical. Chose colors that felt calm, not colors my mother would approve of. The apartment was smaller than the house in Boston, but it fit me better. Every inch belonged to me, and only me. My new job at Westbrook Financial started the following Monday. It was different, less formal, more collaborative. My new boss, Monica Evans, had a management style that valued results over appearances. "We don't do FaceTime for the sake of it," she said. "Deliver, and the rest will take care of itself." It was refreshing. The team welcomed me without question. I wasn't the one with baggage. I was just Madeline, the new senior analyst with a clean slate. I began running again in the mornings, not to outrun exhaustion, but to feel my own heartbeat. I hiked on weekends, cooked simple meals, lit candles, played music for no one but myself. The routines came slowly, but they felt earned. And for a while, I let myself believe the old world wouldn't follow me here. But of course, it did. The first email came a week later. From my father. Subject line, "In case you care." Inside were photos of Rachel's kids, updates I didn't ask for, and a short sentence at the end. "We're still looking for a place. Everything's expensive." I didn't reply. Then came the phone calls, missed calls on holidays, voicemails on birthdays. Nothing direct, just breadcrumbs. Guilt in disguise. I ignored them too. Then one afternoon, Monica pulled me aside. "Your former employer in Boston said your parents contacted them. They wanted your new address." I froze. "What did you tell them?" She gave a slight smile. "That we don't disclose personal employee information under any circumstances. But I thought you should know." That night, I sat on my balcony, staring out at the mountains. I messaged Rachel. "Please remind them. My workplace is not a place to find me." She responded almost instantly. "Already handled. They won't try again. I'm sorry." The next morning, I brought it up in my session with Dr. Holloway, who had agreed to continue therapy via video. She listened, then said, "It's not surprising. What you're doing, holding firm boundaries after years of being the fixer, it changes the whole system. And people who benefited from the old version of you will try to pull her back." "I won't go back," I said. "Not this time." "And what does not going back look like for you?" I thought for a moment. "It looks like saying no. It looks like not explaining myself. It looks like choosing peace, even if they call it selfish." She nodded. "That's what healing looks like too." 2 weeks later, my mother sent a handwritten letter. I didn't open it right away. When I finally did, it was exactly what I expected. thinly veiled manipulation dressed up as concern. We only want what's best for you. Families should stay together. Your father and I aren't getting any younger. Not a single apology. Just a quiet, persistent request to return to the version of me they knew how to use. I didn't write back. That was the week I changed my phone number. And something shifted after that, inside and out. My appetite returned. I started sleeping through the night. My body felt softer again, like it had stopped bracing for impact. People at work noticed. "You're glowing," one colleague said. "Whatever Portland's doing for you, don't stop." I wouldn't, because for the first time in my life, I wasn't surviving my own family. I was living without them. And that decision, quiet as it was, felt louder than any confrontation could ever be. By the end of my second month in Portland, something unexpected began to happen. I stopped counting how long it had been since I left Boston, stopped replaying the confrontation, stopped checking for new messages from people I no longer owed answers to. Without realizing it, my life had started to root itself in new places, in people who had no claim over me, only choice. It started with Ryan Mitchell. He lived 2 floors up. We met in the elevator our first week, both juggling grocery bags, both reaching for the same floor button. He smiled first, that easy kind of smile that doesn't expect anything in return. I told him I was new to the city. He told me the best bagels were on 8th and Alder, but only before noon. That was the beginning. At first, it was simple: casual chats in the lobby, a wave in the hallway, then coffee at the corner shop on Sundays, then weekend hikes when we realized we both hated gyms but loved the quiet of the trails. He never pried, never asked why I moved or what I left behind. And maybe that's why I started opening up. One morning, over coffee and foggy windows, I told him about Boston. Not everything, but enough. He didn't interrupt, didn't offer pity or advice, just listened. And then said, "I'm glad you got out. That takes more strength than most people realize." Those words stayed with me, not because they were grand, but because they were true. Around the same time, my connection with Rachel began to shift. We started a new tradition: Saturday morning video calls. Just her, the kids, and me. No background commentary from our parents, no agenda. Tyler, her oldest, had started applying to colleges and asked for help navigating financial aid. Emma and Lily took turns showing me art projects, new soccer moves, or simply what they had for lunch. It was chaotic, but real. For the first time in our lives, Rachel and I were building something that wasn't filtered through parental expectation. We talked about the little things: her garden, my new neighbors, funny stories from work. And slowly, carefully, a sisterhood began to take root. One that had nothing to do with who was loved more, only with who showed up. And then there were the others. Monica from work invited me to a hiking group. At first, I said no. I didn't want to make small talk. But the third time she asked, I said yes. That group, 8 women from different cities, different paths, became something more than exercise partners. They became brunch friends, text thread friends. "Let me help you move your couch friends." One of them, Elena, even brought over soup when I had the flu. No one asked me to earn it. They just showed up. For so long, I believed love had to be bought, maintained, proved. But here, in this new life, I was learning something quieter, something deeper: that real connection doesn't ask for sacrifice first. It doesn't demand proof before showing up. It simply chooses you. One evening, after a long day at work, I came home to find a box on my doorstep. Inside was a card from Samantha and a photo book she'd made. Pictures of our road trip west, snapshots of Boston, a selfie from my first night in the new apartment. On the last page, she'd written, "You didn't just leave, you arrived." I sat on the couch, holding that book, tears in my eyes, not from pain, but from the realization that I was no longer waiting for someone else to define my worth. I had surrounded myself, finally, with people who saw it clearly. I hadn't rebuilt a family, I'd created one, not out of blood or guilt or legacy, but out of something far more powerful, choice. Some victories aren't loud. They don't arrive with applause, or headlines, or grand confrontations. They don't come with closure wrapped in ribbons or public recognition of pain. Some victories, real ones, come quietly. On a Thursday evening, when you're folding laundry in a space that's finally yours, or sipping tea as the rain taps gently on your window, or waking up one morning and realizing you no longer brace for hurt before checking your phone. That's how I knew I'd won. It wasn't when the check cleared, or when my parents moved out, or even when I crossed into Portland that first day. It was weeks later, when I caught myself laughing, deep, full, careless laughter, at something Tyler said on our video call, and I realized I wasn't waiting for it to be ruined. I was just in it, present, free. My parents still try, from time to time, voicemails from unknown numbers, birthday cards with no return address, notes passed through relatives, carefully worded to sound like concern, but I don't answer. I don't go back. The old contract is broken. The guilt no longer works. And the girl who once begged to be seen no longer needs to be. I still see Rachel. Though, we talk more now than we ever did growing up. It's different. Now that we're no longer playing roles written for us by someone else. She still lives in Boston. But when she says I love you, now, I know she means me. Not the version of me that made our parents comfortable. And Ryan, well, he never needed to know the whole story to choose me. That's what makes him different. What makes all of them, Samantha, Monica, Elena, and the kids, different. They chose me not because they had to, but because they wanted to. That, I've learned, is the most radical kind of love. Not love demanded by blood, but love that shows up without obligation. There's a kind of power in walking away from people who never saw your worth, and choosing to stand with those who do. It's not revenge. It's not punishment. It's something quieter, stronger, more permanent. It's peace. I used to think being the strong one meant holding everyone together. Now, I know the strongest thing I ever did was let go and start again, on my terms. If you've ever had to rebuild your life after being erased by the very people who raised you, know this, you're not alone. And sometimes, walking away quietly is the loudest thing you'll ever do. If this story spoke to you, hit like, leave a comment, and don't forget to subscribe. For more stories about what happens when the quiet one finally chooses themselves.